so this is a series of hip stretches that's going to take the hip from front to back almost in a 360-degree pattern. So there's a nice flow to it, so that way everything will transition from one position into the next, so you can just follow through this thing just as it's done. I'll do both sides, and then we'll go from there. So we're going to start off in a 90-degree or a 90-90 hip position. So I've got 90 degrees at this hip here, another 90 degrees going at this hip here. So we're going to start by going toward this side into internal rotation. So I'm going to get up nice and tall. I'm going to take this leg and kind of gently drive it into the ground just to create a little bit of stability at this hip. And then I'm going to do two things. I'm going to try to slowly rotate to put this glute toward the floor. And I'm going to try to move myself as close to upright as I can. So I'm just going to drive this leg down to the ground, and I'm trying to rotate in toward this glute and toward this hip. So I'm going to feel this right here as I sit in this position. I just want to sit, spend about 20 or 30 seconds in this spot. Deep breaths. You don't want to push the stretch excessively. It should never be painful, but you want to put it to where there's a noticeable amount of stretch. So I'm sitting in right on this side. A couple more seconds here, and then we're going to transition into the next stretch. So right from here, so now I'm going to roll over. So now I've got a mat that I want to get under this knee. This is the only part of it where you'll need a mat. So now we're going to move right into this position. So again, I've got roughly 90 degrees at both legs. To start, we're going to go after the hip. I'm going to get up nice and tall, and I'm just going to drive this knee forward while I'm keeping this glute tensed. If this glute isn't tensed, what'll happen is you'll need to go so far forward, you'll start to arch your lower back. But if you keep this glute tensed, all the movement stays at the hip, and nothing happens to the spine. So I'm going to stay here, just pushing gently into a stretch. Deep breaths, again, maybe about 20 or 30 seconds out of this position. And then now what I want to do is I want to move from the hip and a little bit of my quad. Now I want to come a little bit deeper into the quad itself. So now I'm going to sit back a little bit, and I'm going to grab this ankle, and I'm going to pull it up. So now instead of shifting forward, I'm actually shifting backwards a little bit, trying to put my shoulders right over top of this hip and pull this heel toward my butt. So again, I'm just going to stay in this position, deep breaths, and same idea. I don't want to arch the lower back, so I'm keeping a little bit of tension in my abs just to stop that from happening. Just pull this up as high as I can. If you don't have the flexibility to get your hand all the way around your ankle, you could easily just take like a small towel and wrap it around your ankle to give you something to pull onto. You can always do this near a couch or near a supporting wall just to keep something with this hand to hold for balance if you need to too. Or if you've got okay balance, you can do what I'm doing and just keep your hand right on your leg. Alright, so now we're going to come out of here. Now we're going to keep it moving. So now we're coming from the quad. Now we're going to go right into the adductors. So I'm going to keep this mat out, but now I'm going to slide it under this leg. So we're still staying on this same leg, but now we've moved toward the inside of the thigh. So now what I want to do is keep my hands flat on the ground, keep my back nice and flat, and the goal is to stretch the inside of the thigh. So I'm simply going to sit here, squaring my hips up to the floor, and try to drive my hips down into the ground so I feel the inside of the thigh and the adductors right here. As I hold this stretch, if it feels like I'm starting to get a little bit more pliable, then I can just gently slide this foot out even a little further. But again, I'm trying to stay just squared up and right over the floor. I'm not sitting back into this stretch yet, because if I do that, that's going to give me a little bit too much hamstring and not enough of the inside of the thigh. We'll get to the hamstring in a second. But this we want to stay just inner thigh. So a couple more seconds here. And then I'm just going to gradually shift out of this. And now I'm just going to rotate over. And I'm going to turn this toe all the way up toward the ceiling. And I'm just going to drop onto this leg. Roll over, and now I'm into like a modified hurdler stretch. So this glute's not actually on the floor yet, which almost makes this stretch a little bit easier to apply if you're not super flexible. So I'm just going to stay up nice and tall. I'm squared up and facing this way. And I'm just going to do two things. I'm going to try to just let my butt drop toward the floor. Because again, if you're not super flexible, you won't be able to necessarily keep this leg at a perfect 90 degrees with your butt all the way on the floor. So being up a little bit buys you some wiggle room there. And I'm just bringing this chest forward. If I want to get the hamstring a little differently, I can always rotate my foot in a little bit, which will change the stimulus to the inside of the hamstring. I'm going to rotate it out, which will shift it to the outside of the hamstring just a little bit. Just little modifications we can do there. And then to finish it off, we started with internal rotation, and now we're going to finish in external rotation with a pigeon pose. So now we're going to shift forward and move now almost back into that same position. But now I'm looking at going this way instead of going this way. So now, and you don't have to stay into a perfect 90-90 angle. We can just turn all the way into a pigeon pose, which is right here. My hips are now squared up to the floor. And now I just want to bring my chest forward. Hips are squared. So now I'm going to feel this in the piriformis and the glutes out here. Gradually trying to bring my chest down toward the ground. As long as I keep my back flat, I'm shifting forward. But if I start to round my back, I've got to come up a little bit and just go as far as I can there. Perfect. And then now from there, it just takes you into a spot where you can then just repeat the same concept on the opposite leg. Because now again, it puts me right back in that 90 angle. And then now I would start trying to work toward this hip. So now I'm going to gently push this foot into the ground. And I'm going to try to sit up a little bit. I know on this side, this hip for me is a lot harder to get into, so I can't come up nearly as high. But the concept is still there. I want to put this glute on the floor. I want to push this leg into the ground and trying to sit up as tall as I can. And I can feel it right here in the TFO. And then we'll just go through that whole concept on this leg. So again, you can just follow through on this side. Again, going for about 20, 30 seconds each. So I'm gonna come off of this hip. Get something underneath this knee. And then now we start right back here again, and we got the glute tight. Shifting forward. So we're going right for the upper quad, the rectus femoris, as well as the hip. If it starts to loosen up a little bit, you just let this front knee bend a little bit more, but not letting yourself start to arch your lower back. Just take a few more seconds in this position. And from here now, we're just going to shift back a little bit. I want to get hold of this ankle. If you can grab it with your hand, great. Or again, if you need to, you can wrap something around the ankle. Small towel works really well. Try to get up nice and tall. I want to put my shoulders as over this hip as I can. By sitting back a little bit. Hold this foot up. If it starts to loosen up, you can just move it a little higher as you go. a second or two in this spot, and then we'll switch into the inside of the thigh, the adductors again. So now I'm just gonna let that go. I wanna move the mat onto the other knee, and then out we come this way. And I know this side is a lot tighter for me, so I can't get quite as good of a position. So I just want to take it slow, get this leg out as wide as I can, hands on the ground, back is nice and flat. I'm driving this hip down toward the floor. I'm not sitting back into this one. If I feel myself loosening up, I can just move this over just a little bit. Stay right there. And as I release out of that, bring this leg in a little bit. Now I'm just going to rotate into that modified hurdler stretch. Starting with the toes just facing up, square up toward this leg. And I want to let this leg drop toward the floor. And I want to bring my chest forward this way, but with a flat back. Just deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. And if you want to adjust the hamstring a little bit, instead of keeping the toes straight up, if you turn your toes out, you'll feel it move to more the outside edge of the hamstring. And if I rotate my toes in, I can get it a little bit more at the inside of the thigh, or I can just stay right in the middle. And then we'll finish it again by getting into that pigeon pose. So I can just start by bringing this leg in, just drop my butt right down. It puts me in that 90-90 spot. And then now I can just turn over a little harder. Now hips are squared up to the ground, knees in front of me. Just gonna get my hands on the ground, keep my back nice and flat with my hips squared. I want to go forward as far as I can. If you start to get loose enough that you can come all the way down onto your elbows and keep your back flat, then you can go that far. If not, then you back up on your hands again. Come there. All right, so that covers both legs. Get almost everything that surrounds the hip from front to back. So give it a shot. Let me know what you think.